Hello everybody and welcome to the Future of the Fortress. This is a monthly Q&A hosted on the Bay12 forums by Tarn Adams, talking about the development of Dwarf Fortress. If you'd like to take part in these discussions, I will leave a link to the thread on the forum in the description of this video. There you can ask Tarn a question which may be answered on the next month of the Future of the Fortress. Alongside of these forum posts, Tarn also has the monthly report, where he talks about the general state of Bay12. Let's start with that. Toady writes, Bay12 Games report for the March 1st, 2026. I was sick throughout February, so that sucked. There's a routine patch coming soon, but it's a bit light since I couldn't work on it as much. Then we'll get back to the magic for a bit, and then another update. And the cycle continues, hopefully in a much healthier fashion. 5,000 copies were sold in February, which isn't entirely surprisingly, since it's usually a lighter month. On to the next. Thank you very much, Tarn. And with that, we move on to this month's, admittedly rather light, Future of the Fortress. The first question comes in from Rorax, and they say, any news on the luification of the UI? Will there be a beta for it, or just a straight-up release? And Tarn's response is, Putnam has various things they're doing, so no news there yet. And it turns out that Rorax actually sent in a couple questions, so we'll read them in order. With the second one, as follows, with the map rework being somewhere on the horizon, what are your thoughts about building that? There's a lot of existing geospatial systems out there. Will you write your own or perhaps store the world globe in, example, Postigious or Spatialite? This could open a lot of modding opportunities. And Tarn's response is, I haven't looked at any of those systems. I don't know how much weird stuff they let you do. Globes will not be sufficient. The next question from Rorax is, did you ever think about making Dwarf Fortress Steam Deck certified? And Tarn's response is, see the first response. It's one of my many tasks. And the last question from Rorax is worded kind of funny, so I will do my best to interpret what they're trying to say. Is there a place in the game that allows you to look up what trade goods the merchants requested last year? And I, myself, am happy to inform you that yes, in fact, there is. And I will attach a couple seconds of footage so that my editor can put it into the video. If you click on the world map and then go to the Civilizations tab, as you can see, it does actually show their next seasonal request, as well as the things that you requested from them. It's a bit obtuse, and it also disappears as soon as the wagons arrive, so make sure to check it at the beginning of summer. Tarn also quotes DPH Kraken in the response here, saying, DPH Kraken mentioned the wiki here. I recall it's on the world screen, at least a while ago. And since DPH Kraken mentions that I believe the trade deals are stored in the world screen, I will also give you a link to the wiki in the description of this video. Next up, we have a question from Orceus, and they say, if or when we ever get more diplomacy options in-game, would it be possible to create evil civilizations, or convert a good or neutral civilization towards one with policies and other actions? Could this allow for unique interactions with other evil civilizations, like goblins and intelligent night creatures, etc.? If such mechanics were ever implemented, would it be possible to see other civs at world generation, aside from goblins and bandits? Possibly with a setting to avoid or encourage more of them generating in a world for fun. And Tarn quotes DPH Kraken, so I will read their post first. And they write, I recall Tarn wanting to rework the forced hostilities that goblins and cavefolk have, make the situation more dynamic instead of permanent war. There's a little of this with the offer to parlay. There's mechanics, though not very immediate, where civilizations can shift their values if a book inspires them. Imposing an ideology seems like a pretty fundamental diplomatic interaction, since it's nice to be around states that think or pray like you. Ethics, which determine what acts are criminal, are more fixed, but the game already entrusts certain nobles with lawmaking. There are a lot of intelligent evil creatures running around. Some of them might seem antisocial, and others are already toiling under the goblin yoke. Procedural main races would end up filling goblin roles, either by necessity or for diversity. And Tarn's response is, in the future, yeah, we're planning to make it more dynamic for everybody. This was part of the former entity, rewrite, and embark scenarios, but who knows what it is now. Just pieces as we go, adding more comprehensive systems to replace the current ethics stuff and letting those move around, and adding more variety to starting civs, etc. A question comes in from Alan8325, and they write, Will it be possible at some point in Fortress mode or after unification of Fortress and Adventure modes to move the screen or send units off the embark area while viewing that area? Similar to just moving around in Adventure mode where the area you move into gets loaded by the game. I assume the ability to build things for your fort would remain in the designated embark area, but viewing your squad as they travel through the wilderness doesn't sound like a big jump in functionality over what we currently have in Adventure mode. And Tartan quotes Egan BW, so I will read their response first. And they write, I believe that involves a rewrite of the game's code for maps to allow multiple different unconnected areas to be loaded at the same time, which is planned, and would allow watching your squads go do things away from the fort as well as portals opening to other dimensions and such. And Tarn's response is, it has been planned for a long while, but requires a rewrite to the loaded area, map, and camera code. The next is a series of questions from Beeg, so we'll start at the top. How much of the Myth and Magic generator was shown at GDC do you plan to implement this year? Will it be enough so players can tweak how magic works in a given world to behave in certain ways? And Tarn's response is, it won't be the whole thing. There was a lot about the afterlife and a ton of magic effects tossed in there, which we won't get to. But there should be some customization. Yeah. Part 2 of the questions from Beeg, and they say, how much of the world myth will people within a world know? Could mythical stories be something bards could tell in addition to the usual stories? And Tarn's response is, by default, people know everything from the early days. But at some point, it'll be necessary to remove that, to make research work. The third question from Beeg is, how ubiquitous will we be able to make magic within a world using the myth generator? Could we make magic spells, something most commoners would have access to? And Tarn's response is, the prototype did this. I'm not sure if we'll get to that this time around, but it's a goal. And the fourth and final question from Beeg is, what will the prehistory of the world look like? Will certain deities be responsible for creating certain races? Finally, if the first members of each race are part of the myth generation, would it be possible to trace the bloodlines of most members of a species back to the mythical first one of them? And Tarn's response is, it's a combination of how the myth generator looks and the world generation on the accelerated scale right now. The prototype actions where gods can make races, etc., are now in the game. And it just needs to be refined and diversified a bit. There have been abstract populations for a long time, so it's a question of how these are first created as to whether there are traceable bloodlines. And we got a two-parter from B. Diamond Shaker, and they say, with demon trade sorcerers and magic in general, do you intend to implement more interaction with snatched children and prisoners of war, such as sacrifices, conversion, experimentation? Having lost dwarves return in some way would be interesting, I think. And their second part is honestly pretty similar to the first, so I'll just run them together. And they say, of the stuff that you're working on, or have planned, do you have any features or ideas you are particularly excited about? And Tarn's responses are, there were some notes on this stuff for the Siege update, but I can't guarantee we'll get to the broader prisoner treatment stuff this time. We do want the fort children to return though. I'm excited about all the magic stuff. It has been a long time and I want to get some of it done. Finally. Map stuff will be cool when we get there. I just want things to feel more varied and to see some surprising things. The next question comes in from Vanzetti, and they say, will player-designed monuments and mega projects play a larger role in the game? As it is now, for example, a gigantic statue or a magnificent bridge spanning continents only has value to the player. And Tarn's response is, I think the first thing we had planned here was during the embark scenarios, where your work on a temple complex that your fort is built around would be more specifically recognized, and you could also declare some intent around portions, as you would with the embark reason. All of that would get smeared out, of course, so you can make such designations in every fort, and etc. So we'll start seeing this stuff once the reasons for the player forts are clarified. And a question from Nihilus, and they say, how does the game determine what attributes like strength, endurance, agility, and health, including the respective intensity, to apply on agents and units' birth, like dogs or cave dragons? Did the existing ones of parents influence this in any way, shape, or form? What influences the addition and subtraction of these over the life cycle from juvenile to adult and to old age? And Tarn quotes Spatula and the Flame 52, so I will read their responses. Spatula writes, "They're determined randomly at birth according to the species-defined attribute ranges, and can be trained by using skills and stuff. Most species just use the default human ranges, and the attributes of parents have no impact on the attributes of the child. Attributes don't change with age, mostly only size changes with age, so children and elderly people aren't actually any weaker than adults." And the Flame 52 clarifies with, "Size is strength. Children are much weaker than adults are because they're a fraction of the size. Same reason why getting bitten by a dragon is so much worse than getting bit by a dog." And Tarn's response is, "The replies have pretty much covered what's done here. It's underdeveloped." And an important one from DPH Kraken, and they say, "It looks like we're getting more diplomatic interactions with the next feature release. Will they be accessible to adventurers in positions of power?" And Tarn's response is, "With the current emphasis on magic, I'm not sure we'll see an implementation outside of fort mode this time. There's a lot of additional work that would need to be done for adventure army actions to make sense, since we don't really have zoomed in army fights in any meaningful way. If it's just sending messages to accomplish the same things that can be done from forts, that's more possible." A question comes in from the Marmot, and they say, "Once the Cavern layer is reworked, will we be able to check for terrain features of the caverns on the embark screen, such as rivers or subterranean ecosystems?" And Tarn's response is, "I don't know. Even the minerals are a bit much in the way. There should be some surprises down there, but I know people also want particular setups." Next up is a two-parter from Astix, and they say, "If I understand correctly, the blocker to animal people migrating to forts occasionally is armor sizing. Now that magic is being worked on, have you considered simply hand-waving the problem away with a magical solution?" And Tarn's response is, "That feels specific and constraining in terms of how magic systems are generated. There should be a nicer way to make and automate their clothing and armor production." And edit Q2. "Is it possible to potentially be able to pause world generation and then access Legends mode without finishing world generation? Or is the Legends mode data internally a different format, so it can't be processed by the Legends browser code?" And Tarn's response is, "There are some things that are finalized at the end, but I think the vast majority of it would work. As it stands, you could generate a world and then generate the same one again with a well-selected stop year, assuming the seed reproduction isn't broken, and if it is, it gets fixed." And a question from Sedark. "Is it possible right now to add a stockpile minecart filter for already improved items, similar to what we have for dyed or undyed? Having an already improved filter could help separate items from improvement, be that gems or studs, etc., from items that are already finished. This could lead to better management of stockpiles, making for those who want it, for forts following a production line." And Tarn's response is, "It's a reasonable idea." And lastly, we have a question from friend of the show, Avenkir. And they say, "Anyone know how complicated mod packs can be on Steam? And how Modern Dwarf Fortress fully handles mods dedicated around using modules?" And Tarn's response is, "I'm sure the modding board will be more helpful for questions here. All of vanilla operates as a mod, but I'm not sure how your modules are interacting." And that brings us to the end of the Future of the Fortress. I've been producing these videos for quite some time, and now I've brought on an editor to help me produce them at a faster pace, while simultaneously increasing the quality of the videos. If you're interested in supporting the work of this channel, consider taking a look at my website. I recently added a support page which explains all of the different formats that you can support my work, and the benefits, positives, and negatives. There is also currently a membership discount for the recommended tier on my website, which is 50% off of your first month, which gets you some perks on the live stream as well as supports the ongoing work that I do here on this YouTube channel, as well as my live streams. At the end of the day, though, I'm just happy that you're watching. So thank you very much for taking the time to watch this episode of The Future of the Fortress. I hope to see you in the next month and whenever I upload my next big video. But in the meantime, I'm sure that YouTube has a recommended video for you to click on the screen right now. And hopefully it's a good one. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.